Welcome to the Joyfulicity podcast. I'm your host, Laura Wakefield. My guest today is Kyle Willis. Kyle and I originally met on Twitter, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit there. Kyle grew up in Indiana, and he studied business communications and creative writing at Hanover College. And he has a dream of one day, he has a day job now, but has a dream of one day becoming a full-time author. He has published his first book, Jason Phoenix and the Demon Lamp. And I am down to about 20 pages toward the end. So no spoilers for me because I am not quite finished, but I have read the vast majority of it. And it's a really fun book. And I'm pleased to have you with me here on the show today, Kyle.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Laura.
So tell me, did you always know that you wanted to be a writer? When did you first kind of start thinking you wanted to be a writer?
I did not always want to be a writer. I would say it first started in, college when you're experimenting.
Sure.
But I took a class where we were reading about monsters and we had an assignment and we kind of had to make our own monster. And my professor said, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you take some creative writing classes? And I'm like, okay, this might be fun. And I did. And I'd always loved reading growing up, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, all those fantasy, not really into the nonfiction as much.
I can see that influence in your book.
That's awesome. Because, I think that'd be great to be. They're the greats, but just to be, one day, hopefully I can be there, but let's shoot for something a little lower to start, you know what I mean? But, so it started in college and just kind of kept going. But I started writing this story when I was a senior in high school because I got my heart broke by a girl. And so it's how I wish the story would have played out. Obviously don't have the powers like Jason does, but, that's where it started. Didn't think it would ever be a story. This was me just kind of writing my feelings out on paper. But started in college and then towards senior year in college, I started taking it more serious because my professor said, this could actually be published. And I think it'd be a good story if you just sat down and worked on it and, asked for advice from real editors and from me. And here we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I Googled because I knew that a lot of people want to write a book, myself included. I'm 55 years old and have been talking about it since I was about your age. But 82% of adults say that they would like to write a book someday. And out of those 82%, what would you guess the percentage is that actually begin to write their manuscript?
I want to have some faith, but I also know what it probably really is. So I would guess 7%.
Even more. 3%. 3%
okay.
Out of 82% that say they want to write a book, 3% begin writing, and only 1% actually finish their book and publish it. So you're already in kind of an elite group at your young age, and you should be very proud of that.
Yeah, it is really, great. Whenever I meet with family or friends and that's one thing they'll be like, I told so-and-so, and I'll be like, that's awesome. When you first find out it's going to be published, you're like, wow, this is awesome. And then it happens and it's cool too. And then slowly it starts to fade. but then somebody will come up and be like, I read your book. It's awesome. And then it's back. So It's kind of like this wave. You just keep riding the wave. But that's cool. That's cool to hear. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage of the people that dream of writing a book that actually take it all the way through to completion. So, and it's really fun. Like I said, I have been reading your book and I'm down to the last few pages. I'm at a pretty exciting part right now. Actually, I was hoping to finish before we got on air, but I'll finish just right after I'm down to maybe 20 pages. So it's kind of exciting to see how it all wraps up. So your inspiration began, you're saying, with heartbreak. And that's kind of typical that people will draw, especially when they're newly writing, but even later on with songwriting too, from their personal life experience.
Oh yeah.
Help or hurt, you think? I mean, do you have to kind of overcome that there's more of a real life story? Or does that kind of help you to shape your story?
I think it helps because then you can really communicate how you feel. I mean, you got to have the audience, you got to evoke an emotion on them. Otherwise, it doesn't land. And so I think you can draw from your personal experience and communicate that through your dialogue and your exposition to your audience and really get them to feel what the characters are going through. And that's what I think makes a really good story is connecting and identifying with characters. So drawing on personal experiences is good. I guess there can be a downside because then maybe you become too invested in the characters and perhaps that you can't let them grow. Not sure, but I definitely think there's more positives to draw from your personal experiences. But I guess not everyone can relate to every experience, I guess is the way I would see it.
Do you see yourself a little bit as Jason, the lead character in this book?
Yeah, because that's the experience that inspired the whole story. I was in love with a girl. She didn't feel the same way. And because he goes through a different transformation. So I did too. Obviously, not as
At the
not
same
like him, but yeah. So he tries to change, and then that doesn't always work because, well, I won't ruin the story, but you shouldn't change for somebody. If it's meant to be, it'll be. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But yeah, I do see myself in Jason a lot because all the jokes and how he talks is exactly how I talk. So, yeah, I'd say, and there's also different characters that I draw from my real world that that I incorporated in the story.
I think that's one of the great things about fantasy books is most of us are never going to actually experience something like the things. I mean, they're fantasy, they're not reality.
Yeah,
But there's so many life lessons and there's so many dreams that are reflected there and the things that we wish that we could do and even the things that we do on a more realistic scale can be seen in a fantasy book. Have you ever read anything by Terry Brooks?
no, I've not. What books has
He
he
has a
written?
couple of series, is a sort of Shannara series of maybe 7 books, and then a Magic Kingdom for Sale series of about 7 books. And I used to think that I didn't like fantasy books. I thought,
Yeah,
well, I don't want to read that stuff, right? And I was in a book club and they chose a Terry Brooks book. And at first I was a little disappointed because I thought, oh goodness, I have to read this fantasy book. I loved it. And I got hooked and I went on to read like 20 books by him. And now I'm sold on the whole genre altogether. And so that would be my message to anyone that isn't sure about fantasy books. Give one a try because you might be surprised. They're a lot of fun.
yeah, because it's a situation that is or probably won't happen in the real world, but it's fun to put yourself in that world and feel and experience what the characters are going through. And like you said, you can draw really good takeaways from each story.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I tried to do in my book. And I think that's what any good author tries to do as well.
Exactly. And this book is youth fiction, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Because
age
when
group are you going for with this book?
the main protagonist, he's 17. So anybody in that, teen or really young adult, like I'd say even 21, you can get away with it because you can remember what it's like to be that age and experiencing those types of problems. So yeah, I'd say any type of teenager. So maybe like 13 to 21, I can get away with it. But the prime one is like 16 to 19, because that's when your life's really starting to get real. You're starting to get more responsibilities and you get your first heartbreak. You get, you're starting to think about what you want to do with the rest of your life. So all those common teenage issues, I really tried to embody them into this one story because there's a lot of characters in there and they're all the same age. So they all got different problems. And, teenager may not have unrequited love, but they may had to have grown up too fast because their parent wasn't there. So they had to work 3 jobs. That's a common teenage issue. And I employed a lot of them just throughout the story. That way, uh, the audience can go, oh, I know what that feels like. And they can really identify with the story.
Exactly. Either they know what it feels like or they have a friend that's maybe going through that they can understand better after seeing this character. Yeah, you address a lot of themes in here. You've got a character that is trying to speak out for the life that she wants to live versus the life her parents mapped out for her. You've got the kid that works multiple jobs with the single mom, and a lot of people can relate to that. The kid that's maybe being pushed by their parents to live a life that is not at all the way they want in terms of morality and good and bad, and then you've got Jason who's just exploring his own personal power, and those are all things. I have teenagers. I have 9 children. I don't know if you realized that.
Wow. I
And
did not.
my youngest 3 are all teenagers now, 15, 16, and 19. And so I've been through a lot of teenageness with my children, and I recognized a lot of these things in them and their friends. And so I think teenagers really will relate to these characters well. What would you want? Like you were saying that a good author tries to make sure that there's a takeaway. What takeaway? I mean, what would you want somebody, a teenager that was reading your book, to take from it? What would the overarching message be?
That's a really good question because I think there's a lot of takeaways. I would say the overarching theme would be you'll be okay. Like, because when you're in that situation, it feels like the world is crashing down on you and it's never going to get better. And it does. It does. You're not the first one to go through this. And it sucks in the moment. It really does. But you'll move on and it'll just make you stronger and better as a person and learn from it. I think that's the most important thing is there's no losses in life, only lessons.
Yes.
So as long as you learn from them, I think that's what makes it important. And I just hope that that's what somebody who reads it, they can learn from it and apply it to their life. And then I think as long as I'm helping people in that way, I think I did my job.
Yes, because especially as teenagers, like you said before, often these are the first times that with any level of maturity that kids are beginning to explore these ideas. And it can feel very all consuming.
Yeah.
By the time you're my age, you've been heartbroken a few times and you've
Oh yeah.
survived. So it still hurts, but it's not the same as that first one. The first
Yeah.
hits different.
Oh yeah. I can tell you that. I already
Yeah.
had it a couple of times. And so I agree fully. The first one's the worst. And then you're just like, there's some type of, you've got teenagers, so you probably know what memes are.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a meme. There's a meme where, it's like, this guy chained up and he's talking to a young guy and he's like, first time, huh? So that's what it's like with all these problems as a teenager.
With almost every big life problem, when you're a young child, typically, even if you're going through them, you're not going through them with any sense of personal responsibility to solve them, usually
Mm.
when you're 5 and 10. Like you're still relying on other people to solve them. And teenagers all of a sudden are starting to see that they're going to be going out into the world and dealing with real life themselves and have to have these skills. And I've had a couple of my teenagers that right before their 18th birthday had a little bit of an existential crisis and felt like, I don't know if I'm ready to be an adult. I don't think I can do it. And they worked through it and they're doing just fine in adulthood. But it's a scary time. It's a very tumultuous, emotional time. And you can see that in your characters. I will say you're very good at one of the things that impressed me, especially for your first book, is your attention to detail, creating a scene. I could tell that you have taken some classes, right? To learn how to do that. So tell me about your process. How do you take a story idea and turn it into a full length book, I think that's where most of us get overwhelmed, is that just the brass tacks process. So how does that work? How did you do it?
Yeah, so I start every story the same way. I outline. Literally, we're taught in school when you're academically writing, create an outline. So this one's way more fun. I hate writing academically, but this is a lot more fun, and we like what we choose to do. So when you start outlining, you have the introduction, and then you've got the rising action, climax, and then you've got like the resolution and everything. But then you can break it down even further, and there's other plot points in there. But I start out doing that, and once I get the main outline done, I'll break them into kind of chapters. How many chapters do I think this is gonna need? And I'll write down the main bullet points I want in each chapter to accomplish, and then I just start writing. Um, so I'm a very structured writer, but I'm also a spontaneous writer as well. I'm a hybrid, which there's two types. Well, three technically, but I've really embraced the creative side because, like I said, I'll outline and plan everything out, but then there will be a creative moment where I'm like, I need to add this, and I do that. And you're at the point in the story, but with the talking dog, Tiny, that came to me in a dream, and at 1 a.m. I woke up from that dream, and I just wrote on my notepad next to my desk. I just wrote talking dog, and I included that in the story. And everyone I've talked to, they said that's one of my favorite moments in the book, and I'm like, awesome.
I think what's so fun about it is that you structure it in a way that the reader figures out that it's the dog before Jason does.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like, oh, I just, got this little little nugget in there before the character even realized it was the dog. And that's kind of a fun moment as the reader. Isn't that funny that the best ideas often come at 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the middle of
Oh
the
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've seen the show How I Met Your Mother, but there's a saying. It's like nothing happens good after 12 a.m. Like just go to bed. Well, I disprove that.
A lot of writers will say that, and I've had that happen as well with some of my writing. I've never written a full-length book yet. I'm still planning to. That you'll wake up sometimes and have almost like just this complete download,
Yeah.
just all of a sudden. And it's your brain has been working on it, I think, for a long time before that happens. But then you'll just start free writing and get like I write blog posts, but the whole blog post will just free flow out of me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Almost effortless, but it isn't because you've already been pondering and mulling it over for a week or two.
Yeah. No, it is really interesting how that works. We're supposed to be resting and our brain is supposed to be rejuvenating itself, but yet we come up with these really interesting ideas and then we turn them into stories.
So you have a day job, full-time job.
Yes.
That's the biggest excuse most of us give is that we don't have time for this. How did you carve out time to write and publish a book when, you're busy? You had school, then you have full-time work. Like how did you find the time to do it?
It's not hard to find time when you love doing it. That's what I would say. I would come home from work and I would go to the gym and then I'd have dinner and I'd sit down and write for a couple hours or just an hour, whatever, you know. Uh, I would say I would set measurable goals. So like however you want to break it down. If it's time, then okay. If you want to do it, I choose to do it by number of words. Um,
Hmm.
because you might set the goal of let's write an hour, but you might only write 100 words. Well, that's not very much.
Right.
It's a good starting point. I think that might be a paragraph, but start out with little goals and then, versus, like I said, 100 words, it might take someone an hour to do that. But if you can write, 1,000 words in an hour or two, that's not bad. So
And do you edit on the spot, or do you just write until you have your 1,000 and then go back later and kind of tweak it?
I mean, if I misspell a word, then yeah, I'll fix it on the spot. Because that saves me time later. Because at the end it'll be like, okay, what was I trying to say here?
Right.
But um, no, for the most part, I will write it all out, and then at the end of the chapter, I'll go back and I'll reread it, make sure that makes grammatical sense. In line edit as well, typos, comma splices, whatever. But also like reading it for plot hole errors, I'll try to do that the best I can. But for the most part, I'm no expert, even having published a book. I'm not the grammatical whiz. So I have an editor who runs through it and for, the grammar errors and the plot hole errors. So it's a lot of process, and the editing is probably the most monotonous and boring, I would say.
But so important. So many
Oh yeah.
self-published. I can't remember. Or did you have a publisher? You actually have a publisher.
It's yeah, it's a really funny thing. It's like a hybrid situation, but yeah, they are an established company.
Yeah,
So
just with some self-published books, you can tell that they did not get an editor.
yeah.
And it's an important step. Even if you consider yourself an accomplished writer, I would recommend getting an editor to people, because when you're writing a story, as you know, you get too close to it. It makes sense to you because you wrote it, but having that second set or third set of proofreaders and editors look at it is so helpful, because they can tell you this isn't making sense to a reader that doesn't know what you mean.
Yeah, and you also wanna deliver the best product to somebody. You wouldn't wanna buy a shirt that only has, one sleeve on it, that'd look weird. So, you gotta fix it up and make it the best it can be, and you also wanna come off as like you know what you're doing,
Okay.
you know? You wanna sound intelligent. If I find, misspellings or something every once in a while. I found one in Stephanie Meyer's book. I'll do that. When I'm reading through a very accomplished authors, I'll be looking for it. And I found one in her latest book, not Twilight, Midnight Sun. I found one and I was like, haha, I got you. But it's like, it doesn't matter.
I had to smile when you said that Jason, the main character, was reading Twilight books. That made me laugh. It made me smile.
Well, that was one of the books that we read in that mythography class
Yeah.
that really turned me on to writing. And I'd avoided Twilight for years. I knew what it was about, and I'm like, I'm not into that. And then I read it, and I'm like, this is awesome.
If vampires were a real big deal, was it Anne Rice that wrote all of the vampire books for a while too?
Yeah, I think so.
Stephanie Meyers came out with hers. So did you have any kind of a support system? I know Twitter has a pretty big hashtag writing community. I haven't jumped in too much to that, but I've been curious about it, where people support each other. Did you have a support structure when you were writing that was helpful to you?
Not digitally like the writing community. I would say mine was more personal. Like my writing professor at Hanover College, Saul Lemron, and in the dedication part, I gave him a very big thank you, because I wouldn't have got very far without him. He was with me every step of the way. So I'm very grateful to him, but also like my brother, who was much younger at the time. He was like 18. So he was the perfect age. I was like, you're my prime candidate. Read this and tell me what you like. So thanks to him. And then, my mom is actually, she works for Elenco, and her job is to format and edit. So I'm like, you're my perfect. Yeah. I was like, you're my perfect editor right now. And I actually did hire her because, she's very busy. She works too much. So I pay her, and it all worked out. But, then of course once I got on with Pathfinder, I didn't need to have my mom. They had their editor, and they had, they also did the editing and the proofreading and all that stuff. So very personal, and just people in my life And then, like you said, the writing community is amazing. They're very supportive of each other because we're all in it together.
Absolutely. This is a hard thing. And obviously, if 82% of the population wants to write, there's something very transformative, I think, about the process. How do you feel like, or has it changed you in any way to have gone through that full process and actually have accomplished a finished product? What reverberating effects has there been in your life generally from that?
It's kind of a cool conversation topic to have because, kind of like we're sitting here talking about it, people are like, that's so mind blowing that you actually did that. Because they're like, I struggle to write a couple pages, let alone 250 or however many. So it's kind of cool to sit there and be like, wow, I kind of did something awesome. I did have one person who, they were a young teenager and they reached out and just said, like, hey, I read your book and I really identified what Jason's going through. So, thank you. And I think you're going to help out a lot of people. So that was probably way better than any financial reward I could have gotten. I think I mean, that's what, like I said, that's why I did it because I went through it. And so if I can help someone else too.
Yeah, I imagine. And this was just published in March of this year, March 2023. So it's kind of brand new out
Yeah.
there. That's pretty exciting. What comes next for you? Do you have any other books kind of in the pipeline that you're working on, or what's your next writing goal?
Well, the next goal is to get the sequel out there, which the first draft is done. Um, and kind of, like I said, I had my editor go through and just kind of read it. But before I did that, I had my brother read it again. He's older now, but he still enjoys it. And, he gave me his advice and I had my mom go through it again just real quick for edits and stuff.
Sure.
So going and plan on doing the sequel. And then there's going to be a third one. I've not started that at all because I want to focus on the sequel first. I'm very much, I don't like to have multiple projects going on at one time because then I feel like you're not putting your all into the one. So I pretty much focus on one at a time, but I've got other stories up here going on and I've got like the general outline of what I want to do with them, but pretty concentrated right now on the sequel,
And it's
which,
the same characters as Jason
oh
Bean
yeah.
and Demon Lamb.
Oh yeah. All the same characters. I mean, you got a new antagonist. Um, but yeah, pretty much it's all the same. I'll say this, my brother really liked the sequel more because you don't really get to see what Jason can do in the first one as much. But I'm like, my brother literally said, why didn't he just drop a comment on the bad guys? Like, well, Cole, that'd be really boring. He I had to tame him down a little bit. Otherwise, the story's going to be really boring, which was the hardest thing to do with the story, I would say. Because, I mean, he is a god, basically. But yeah, the sequel was way more, I think, fun because I got to really experiment with what Jason could do and along with what other characters can do in the story. And then the third one, it's it's got me really excited because there's just stuff that happens that I'm really excited, right?
So you already know the basic story and conclusion all the way through the whole trilogy.
Yeah. Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of fun. That's exciting.
But I like I said earlier, I think one thing I've gotten much better about is embracing change. And so if something comes up and I have to change the way I originally wrote it, then I'm very open to that. But I pretty much know how the story's gonna end. And I think everyone's gonna like it.
I have several friends. So most of the writing I do is nonfiction. It's kind of
Yeah.
self-help stuff, but I have several friends that are published authors of, fiction. And one even does youth fantasy fiction. And she'll say the same thing that the characters almost take on a life of their own. And sometimes the characters sort of tell you what to write, that you're controlling the writing to some extent, but the characters do grow and change. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. good example is going to be like Jason's brother Daniel. He's not too important in the first one, but I found that as I kept going throughout the trilogy, I'm like, he kind of becomes more important and his journey is pretty important as well. So yeah, they do kind of take on a life of their own, and you end up being, you'll write something and be like, that character wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So you have to change it.
Yeah, that's not right. Hold on.
Yeah, they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't do that.
That's fine. So, monsters.
Mhm.
What attracted you to all of that? Monsters, fantasy, all of that, but monsters specifically. Like what made you think I really want to write about that?
I think they're cool. I mean, I don't see any monsters running around in our world. Um,
Well, sometimes I think maybe there are.
Not true. Sometimes they are. They're monsters and not awesome to read
Yeah.
about. But I would say it's about having what we don't have and putting yourself in the world where there are mythical monsters and creatures and all powerful beings. And so it's a lot more, I think, fun to write about that versus I could write a self-help book. I've got the experience I could. It doesn't interest me. And I think you need to be interested to do that.
Yes.
So yeah. And all my favorite books growing up were about monsters. I love the Percy Jackson series, the Harry Potter series. And obviously Twilight, that's in there too. So a lot of the stories I grew up with had monsters in them. And so that's where I think my inspiration and my love comes from.
Yeah, one of my sons really loved the Percy Jackson books.
Yeah.
When he was, I guess, maybe middle school or early high school, he just tore through those. Love,
Yeah.
love, loved. Well, I do
Yeah.
have
Same.
another question for you, but before I ask you that, tell everybody how they find you. How do they find your book? All things to do with that.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is gunshow_25. I made that when I was 15. Don't give me too much. Be rough about that. You can also connect with me on Instagram. Handle is Kyle_Willis34. And then my website is also kylescorner.godaddy.com. You can reach out to me on there. But you can also find my book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and also on Kindle. But if you reach out directly to me and buy one for me, I'll sign it for you. And then one day you'll sell it for millions.
Right. Exactly. I like that. I love it. And I'll put all of those links in the bio description for this podcast episode too, so that it's easy for people to find them there.
Nice.
But I would encourage everyone to go out, and I don't think I'm following you on Instagram yet. So I'll fix that right after this episode. We finish taping, because I spend more time on Instagram than Twitter.
Okay.
But anyway, so as you know, this podcast is primarily focused on joyful living and living authentically and following our dreams and our passions. And you're someone who is a good example of doing that, which is why I was excited to have you as a guest on the show, and that you started so young doing that. Most of us wait until much older in life to finally get around to fulfilling those dreams and passion. So what would you say to somebody who wants to write a book, but is feeling just completely overwhelmed, or maybe doesn't think that they're a good enough writer, or whatever is holding them up from accomplishing what you have accomplished? What would your advice be to them on where to start and how to overcome that?
I'd say you just got to go for it. I mean, the first step is always the scariest, but trust me, there's hundreds, thousands, millions of authors. And if you want it, you just got to have the drive and the want. I'd say those are the two things. You just got to have the desire and the passion to write. And you may, like I said, you may feel lost on, I want to write a book, but I don't have an idea. Just get a piece of paper and start very on the ground floor. What type of story is it? Fiction, nonfiction? Okay, it's a fiction story. What genre is it? fantasy, romance, sci-fi. Okay, we're writing sci-fi, and just keep going. You may feel like people are gonna judge you because, oh, he's gonna write a story. I was the same way. I'd be in the library and my friends would be like, "Hey, we're going out. You coming?" No, I've got to write. Write. What are you writing? Yeah, oh yeah. And they give me so much crap about it, but look at me, look at me now. I'm not rich off of it, but they can sit there and go, well, all those times you're in the library, it turned into something.
And I mean, getting rich off of it wouldn't be horrible. Like we'd all
Oh
like
yeah.
like that. But like you said earlier, there's so many other rewards that come from the process aside from that.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you're writing to get rich, sorry, you need to do it. You need to do something else, but if you want to write to have, fulfilling like a lifelong goal or make an impact on someone's life, I have to say, yeah, go for it. But yeah, if someone is feeling intimidated by the whole process, just take it one step at a time and look for help, you don't have to feel like you're doing it alone. I think a lot of people, they think, oh, I can't get a publisher, which is hard. It's hard to find publishers, especially as a new author. But reach out and ask people. Like you said, I found you on Twitter. I found other authors on Twitter, and I'm always asking them questions.
And I think that people don't mind stopping to help you because something that you say is going to help them too. I mean, most people that are in creative fields, whether it's writing or music or any of those sorts of things, it can be a bit of a lonely process sometimes. Like you said, your
Yeah.
friends are all going out and you're not, you're staying back to write. So the bigger network of people who kind of get you and get what you're trying to do, the better, I think.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm a certified life coach. And one thing that I find funny is that most life coaches have a coach, even though we're trained, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just to bounce ideas off of, so you don't feel like you're sort of floating out there by yourself in this creative endeavor.
Yeah. It can feel kind of lonely sometimes, but then you realize you're not. There's a bunch of you and you just got to reach out and connect with someone.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much. I would really encourage everyone to get a copy of Jason Phoenix and the Demon Lamp for yourself. As soon as we get off of here, I'm going to go finish those last 20 pages and see what happened. But we haven't talked a lot about the book itself because I didn't want any spoilers. I didn't want to give away the story. But it's really cute. It's a fun read and it's not a difficult read. Like you can read this without, like some books are very, very heavy. This one actually flows along very easily. And I've really enjoyed it. Even at 55, I know it's written for teenagers, but I've enjoyed the story and I'm anxious to see what happens in book 2.
So let me ask you a question.
Absolutely.
What's been your favorite thing about the book? Because you're obviously not a teenager, so maybe you can remember what it's like, but
I can remember, and most recently, I just am right in the midst of helping my kids through some of that. But you'd be surprised, even in your 50s, you very much remember those formative years, those emotional things that happen because they're
yeah,
the first. Your first love, your first heartbreak, your first kiss, all those sorts of things. You don't forget those things as you get older. They have an impact. I think that I don't know if I want to give too much away, but I think that the primary female character in here, of course, appealed to me, particularly her journey with feeling stuck in a life path set by someone else
yeah,
and wanting to break out of that, because I think that's a very common thing. It's something that I went through on a small scale in my life, not in exactly the same way, but I think almost everyone struggles with that. If it's not your parents who are setting it, it's society, it's religious thinking, it's whatever has led you to think my life needs to look like this and go on this particular path, and maybe your heart's calling you somewhere else. We've all felt that. And I have enjoyed that journey for that character that I don't like, is I don't want to give the story away to anyone who hasn't read it yet. But, I think that has been my favorite part. And of course, Jason, the main character, is a lot of fun as well. And I actually
Cool.
like the bad guys too. Not that I liked
I
him.
think,
I kind of enjoy the particular demon character in this story as well.
I won't lie, she becomes my favorite character in the sequel.
So she carries on throughout the same.
Yeah, she's a part of the whole series.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'll be anxious to see how that character develops.
Yeah, like I said, she becomes my favorite. And another thing everyone always asks is like, "Are you into demonic worship?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, it's not like that at all." Like, because I was trying. There's a store in my hometown that is a Christian-based value store that I was talking about, putting this in their store since I'm from there. I thought they would do it, but then again, it's literally got the word demon on the cover, and they're a Christian store, so they're like, "Yeah, we can't do that." And I'm like, "It's not like that at all."
But
But
if
I
they had
understand.
read it, yeah, I can tell you, having read it, that anyone who might have that concern from the title, it's not like that at all.
You're right.
There is a
Yeah.
character like that, but that's definitely not the feeling that you get at all from this book. If anything, you get a very wholesome theme. I think the teenagers involved are overall pretty wholesome kids. And I wouldn't hesitate at all to recommend this book to a teenager. There's no negative messages in this book, in my opinion, that I got from it at all.
Cool. I'm glad you understand that. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And like I said, I will put the links to the book and to where to find you in the description. And I appreciate you being here.
yeah, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I had a really good time talking to you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining me today on the Joyfulicity podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share, and come follow me on all major social media sites at Joyfulicity or on my website, joyfulicity.com. You can follow the link in the description for this episode to all of the places that we can connect. Have a great day, everybody, and remember, dare to dream, plan to play, live to learn.